Did you listen to Jeff and Professor Hamo in the morning? Here's what you missed.
And then that cynicism you talked about, Irungu. I mean, you can't blame some people for being cynical, though. When you look at the papers, I was asking Prof, is there any good news today? Is there any good news in the papers? Look at this, 61 billion shillings. That's just today.
We're too comfortable.
That's what it is, huh?
We're too comfortable. We watch these headlines day after day. Most of us take no action. We simply roll over and pretend it didn't happen.
Denial.
It's a temporary form, it's a form of temporary insanity, unfortunately. I hope in the next 5 to 10 years we will come through this, but to be honest, actually we will look back at this period and we will ask, our children will ask us, where were you when you were reading these headlines? In fact, we should all keep these newspapers for our children and
Seriously.
No, seriously. It's a very serious matter. I mean, the amounts of monies are just ridiculous.
Ridiculous. And the complacency. And then we all look to our leaders and say, oh, why don't you arrest someone, show us, arrest someone. But, it starts with you. These people aren't going to help us out. They're not going to help us out.
Wewe mwenyewe unasema hivyo na umeibia HR masaa ya kazi. Sasa hiyo unaongea uko kwa Twitter ukiepa kazi.
Uko hafti.
Ukiandika.
Unasema uko kazini.
Si uko kazini. I'm benchmarking.
Is there any hope, Irungu?
There is. I think one of the findings for me was this finding that 1 in 2 Kenyans stand up for their own rights, and 1 in 3 have actually stood up for the rights of others. So I think there is a moment that we can acknowledge as Kenyans that we are a society that is very different from some of our neighbors. The level of fear, the level of wants that we see in our neighborhood in this region is actually not something that most Kenyans experience at the moment, but we can get better.
Absolutely. We're talking live with Irungu Houghton. He is the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya, and we're talking about the 70 years since the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Excuse me. Do you know your human rights? What are they worth? Do you care? Let's take a break, come back, plenty more ahead. You may have some questions and comments. Send them through us at Kunanga Jeff.
At Hamo Prof.
The hashtag, as always,
Jeff and Hamo on Hot. The world.
Just like Irungu Houghton is saying, my country people, you should know your human rights. He is the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya. We're talking 70 years since the Declaration of Human Rights. Do you know your rights? Moses Kimngetich, all the way from Eldoret, El Dorado LD, says, Jeff, say hi to Irungu. I'm loving every bit of the conversation. It is smoking. Anafanya kazi nzuri sana. Well done. Well done. Molly Abende, she's echoing the fact that 70% of women still face harassment in public transport. Just what Irungu said earlier, or public spaces in Kenya. And then, oh man.
70%.
Yeah. Look, Irungu, and folks, we're going to encourage you to call in 0722
20 88 20
or 0734
20 88 20.
Have your human rights been violated, or are you satisfied with where you are or where the country is right now? We always talk about a revolution, Irungu. The revolution will not be televised. A revolution is coming. Is that a little, too much or too over the top here? Or is it coming?
Well, as long as the state does not switch off our television stations again this year, we should be able to watch it.
10 days. 10 days. We were switched off for 10 days.
Yes.
10 days, yeah.
We were punished.
Nada tumezao.
Talking to people in government, they sometimes say this was a silly season. It was a season where everybody lost their heads. I do hope that we don't go back to that place that saw us with so much violence on our streets and so much intimidation. And now I think with the handshake, there's an opportunity to do different things. But I think the handshake will not make sense unless we're unable to deepen. We must deepen the culture of human rights and respect for each other's dignity, and also that people should be kept safe. And it doesn't matter what class you are, what age you are. These rights are really born. You're born with these rights. It's not that they were given to you by the Constitution. You are born with these rights. That's the fundamental view that underpins all human rights standards.
Speaking of Constitution, what does your poll say about Kenyans? Are they satisfied with the Constitution as it is right now?
23 million Kenyans are probably satisfied with the Constitution, and that's an important finding given the rush that the political class are trying to push us towards a referendum. And I think for me the key thing is that if we do not save the Constitution from any amendments, particularly with regards to the Bill of Rights, we will be going backwards rather than forwards.
Yeah, and there's some people who are proposing that they, reserve some seats for certain people and divide it into this and that. We go back to a Putin Medvedev situation.
Some prime minister hapa, vice president number 17. Unajua tuwezi hata
deputies pale.
Tuwezi hata kusubuana kwa county. Watu wamemea pepe. Tujegeane huku juu.
Do you have any questions for Irungu Houghton? 0722
208820.
0734
208820.
Isaac Mudusi is asking, where do human rights activists get information from? Why? Isaac.
So it's a great question.
Yes.
We actually get our information from people like you, Isaac. We, as Amnesty International, we are a membership association, so we have members all over the country. We have supporters, 10,000 supporters take action regularly on causes that we think are important. It is from them that we get the information. The opinion poll that we were talking about earlier is available on our website, amnestykenya.org, and it's called Better But Still Unequal. AmnestyKenya.org.
AmnestyKenya.org. Hot 96, you're on the air. Good morning. County number 035, which is if Kajiado 034, what is 035?
Kericho County.
Kericho County. Go ahead.
Yes, nataka kuwapongeza tu.
Oh, pongeza.
Asante.
Just like that.
Yeah.
And then he ran out of credit.
That one has to be, it can't be a Kenyan. That was too brief and too clear.
Anajua ni nini anataka.
Thank you, Kericho.
Masha DX of Taxify says, Jeff, please big up Mr. Irungu. He's doing a great job. Kudos. Masha, ulipata M-Pesa yako?
Bado sijafika.
Hot 96, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff.
Yeah, who's this?
Pale Oliver Kilande.
Kutoka wapi?
Niko Kahawa.
Kahawa Shukari au Kahawa Mercury?
Wendani.
Haya, salimia director.
Director, jambo.
Salama ndugu. Habari Oliver?
Salama. Na hii Kenya kuna human rights kweli?
Iko.
Human rights gani kama wazee wamewekwa kazi, vijana bado tunahangaika?
No, it's a good point. Actually, the right to work is enshrined in many international standards, and you must demand it. If you are jobless, if you have no income, and we see all this money that is being wasted by corrupt officials, you must demand that. That is your right. Your right is to have the taxes that this country produces deal with the issues that people are concerned about. You may be interested. The biggest risk to Kenyans at the moment is the denial of health services and also police killings. These are the ones that Kenyans are saying that they fear most. The right to health and the right to life.
So Agenda 4, as it stands, only one of them is what they're concerned about.
Yeah, and actually, what was interesting, I think, when we asked Kenyans, what do you know? Do you know about the Big Four agenda? Actually, only 4 out of every 10 Kenyans had ever heard of the Big Four.
Yeah, Oliver, go ahead.
But again, we need some guidelines on how to deal with such issues, because a lot of youth are ignorant on their human rights concerning how they should access these jobs.
Yeah.
No,
so if the director can give us some limelight on how we can approach such issues.
Okay, Oliver, what do you do?
I'm just a hustler here in town.
Alafu Moody Awori amepewa kazi ya youths.
Imagine bwana, jamaa amepiga 90 baada nataka kutembea asubuhi. Jalale tu.
Ile akusanya akiwa na miaka ya vijana.
Hukusikia
Kwa sports.
lakini Oliver, Rais alisema ati nyinyi mnaiba sana, nyinyi mayouths.
Lakini sasa hata sisi kama wanaiba mpaka state sasa mbona sisi tuache kuiba?
We spread the love.
Spread the love.
Thank you guys.
Okay, Oliver, have a good day. Thank you. Goodness, there is that undercurrent, right? People are pissed off, I'd say. Huh? They're angry. Javiku Kute has a good point. We are fighting for 2/3 gender rule, yet some even don't know how it's going to benefit us.
So the issue of gender equality is a critical, critical conversation for the country. As we see from the statistics and from the analysis, and even if you just talk to women in your neighborhood, their ability to be able to move ahead is not as easy as for men broadly. And I think for me, the 2/3, as Amnesty, we support the 2/3 agenda, because what it will do is it will ensure that no one gender dominates our parliament. But the question is really, in addition to the numbers, can we add quality to the legislation that they bring? And when women come to parliament, they will not just focus on the issues that women are concerned about. They will focus on all the issues that are out there. So I think in many ways we need to support. I was very disappointed when something like 100 members of parliament failed to show up to work that day in order to vote one way or the other. I think it's one thing to have a view, but to not show up to work, for me, is unacceptable.
Yeah, and then we were interviewing Alex Koskei, the MP from Mgren, remember?
Yes.
And he said it was the exact same bill as it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And the definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, which is ridiculous, so sad. Let's go to the phones. 0722 20 88 20. Hard 96, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff.
Yeah, who's this?
This is Naina from Ruben.
Minor from where?
Ruben.
Come on, man.
Oh. Hey, Minor, who's Ruben? I asked you this before. Who is Ruben?
Ruben.
Anaishi wapi?
Why don't you come to the library and get the research document?
I am Salimia director.
Director Houghton, man.
Vipi Minor? You're coming from Atlanta?
Transformation.
From the city?
From into city. Is it even city?
Sema Minor.
Sasa niwaulize. Hii mambo ya kujiongezea mshahara wa watu. Kidao ni wapi? Ama hiyo pia sio human right, kwa sababu I'm concerned kwa sababu these people are serving me and they should consult me before wajiongeze mshahara. Ni kama sasa huyo amuke siku moja aseme nataka munilipe pesa fulani hapa na hakuna kuongea. Unaona?
Yeah. But Minor,
you example umetumia ndio bana.
Yeah, Minor, but they really don't care. Eh?
They don't care.
Hawajali.
Watu kuna amuka anasema tunataka kumewesha vitambi. Director. Director, is that one of the violations of human rights? Ama nimekosea kwa sababu, I'm concerned.
No, the concern is there. But at least you have a chicken.
Jamhuri.
Universal Italy.
Yeah, please take care. No, I think the point you're raising is very important. Kenyans need jobs. They need livelihoods. They need safety. They need to be able to live with dignity. These are the basic things that we all need. And I think the point you're raising about whether there are jobs for young men, I think we need to find ways, both government and the private sector. So last week there was a whole range of companies that declared that they are not going to make profits this year. Many of them. And you're now seeing other big banks beginning to merge and so on. So we are living in a very difficult period, and it will not change in the next 1 year or so. So I think we need to think a lot about demanding from our governments that they be public works programs. I was very concerned about the NYS scandal, not just because so much money has been stolen, but actually what happened with that is a lot of young people lost the opportunity to work. Places like Kibra, places like Madare, that was the major impact of the NYS scandal. It wasn't just the money that left, but it was actually that people lost jobs.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, Minor.
Na sijapata credit yangu.
Hata hiyo ni human right violation.
Hiyo ni violation. Ni watu wapenda katiba.
Mara moja.
Thanks, Minor. Paul is
1 out of every 16. That's a new poll.
Gongu Kiari says, great discussion today. Corruption has made us buy our rights.
Yes.
Kitu kidogo kila mahali. Good job, Mr. Irungu.
Unasimamishwa kwa roadblock, unaulizwa receipt ya kutag. kutaki trailer. Na unaendesha personal car, hauna hata trailer. But unaona utakuwa na nia fulani. In the near future unaweza
consider.
Yes. So lazima ujiprepare.
Kuna premeditated crime.
Yes, uko na nia.
Odd 96, you're on the air. Good morning.
Morning to you, Jeff.
Yeah, ni aje, nani ndugu?
Huyu ni John Manda.
Kutoka wapi?
Niko Nakuru County. President anaitwa Rongai.
Rongai, Las Vegas. Salimia director.
Mimi niko na swali.
Uliza.
Mimi nauliza hii swali. Nauliza hivi. Kwa nini hao waheshimiwa hao wamekuwa nchi?
Wamekuwa?
Wakishikwa wanapelekwa wanaenda wanatibiwa, lakini ule mnyonge ule ambaye ni mwizi wa kuku, mwizi wa mayai, akishikwa yeye anafungwa hapa anahukumiwa nyongo. Sasa nilikuwa nauliza human rights hapo wanaweza tusaidia?
That's a good point there. You know, you steal big, you get off on Tuesday because you have a great lawyer. You steal a chicken, you're going for life. Okay.
So 3 weeks ago, Jeff and Hamo, I was at Committee Maximum Security. And I spent a bit of time talking to prisoners who were on death row but are now on serving life sentences. And one of the things that I was very shocked about was something like 75% of all the prisoners that we have in our jails are young men, primarily. They are below the age of 30, sometimes even below the age of 25. But the thing that shocked me most is 85% of those people that are young and incarcerated in our jails, 85% of them did not have legal representation. What? So when you see wealthy people, politicians going to court with 10 or 15 lawyers, just imagine for every one of those, there is probably about 10 who don't have any lawyer at all, and they're going in for exactly the same things that were just described.
When is the last time we hung someone? Do you know?
1987, 1987. So a very long time ago.
This was post-coup.
This was post-coup. In fact, the last two were actually coup plotters.
87, 30 years.
Yeah.
And the death penalty, is that still in effect?
So death penalty is still in effect. It is possible to confer a punishment by death sentence, and actually our judges continue to do this, and our prosecutors sometimes continue to ask the judges for this. But the reality is that for the last two governments, they have commuted all the death penalty cases to life sentences. Something like 6,000 people have been commuted because this is an inhumane and outmoded method of discipline. And we know this because it wasn't, in many ways, it came with the colonial government.
Wow.
Let me give you another statistic, actually very interesting. So between 1952 and 1956, so just after the state of emergency, during the state of emergency, and just after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was declared, the colonial government actually executed one man and woman every day for 4 years. And many of those were our heroes and heroines. They were freedom fighters who basically said they had the right to vote. In fact, all the things that were in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that the Britons were now enjoying, but they were not allowing us to have.
One man a day
for 4 years.
My goodness.
So we have much to be thankful for.
Absolutely.
Yes, we have.
Wayne Wiki. I became a human rights activist on the 7th of September when a policeman at Pango Traffic came to the bus and said, "Umbwa nyinyi shukeni haraka." They flagged down the bus. When I asked Umbwa ni nani, I was beaten and taken to the cells. Is that a typical story, Irungu?
Unfortunately, many Kenyans have this experience. I mean, I think they were, in the study that we looked at, many Kenyans talked about intimidation by police officers. But I think we need to be clear, and I think the police themselves at the highest level are very clear. If you speak to the Inspector General, the Deputy Inspector General, they would tell you that this behavior is not it's not the behavior of the police force. That anybody who's wearing a uniform has to treat people with courtesy, with dignity, and if they are not doing that, there are places you can go to complain. The first place you can go to complain is the Internal Affairs Unit of the Police Service, or you can go to the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Their numbers are on the internet. They will take your reports and they will take action on them.
Yeah, police. Hii ya polisi penye tunatakiwa turipoti polisi mwingine.
Sasa usikuwe confused.
Sema hii ya.
The Internal Affairs Unit is a special unit that is there to basically investigate complaints against the police.
Okay.
The Independent Policing Oversight Authority comes out of our constitution, and it is an independent body that is responsible for investigating the police. You are not working to police officers to report other police officers. They have a duty. In fact, that is why they are paid a salary. And if they don't want the salary, I think, what was his name, the miner, would very happily go and work for the IPOA.
Yeah, happily.
Ataenda. Na wewe niulize.
Hata atabeba hiyo kuku.
Has evidence.
Jogo ya kuku.
In case they don't give him lunch there, he can give lunch to everybody.
Kuna huyu Miguna. Hii wakati anasema I'm not boarding. Is that fighting for human rights?
So his rights were violated. He should not have been ejected in the way that he was. And in many ways, we hope that now that the handshake is there, that and the tempers come down and the emotions come down, that actually he will be allowed to come back into the country and be with his family. The man has family here.
He does. He also has a new book coming out on the 20th of December.
Yeah, let him launch it here. We debate it.
Which you feature greatly ndani yake.
Greatly.
You have a whole chapter.
It's called Treason. My goodness. But there's someone just said here. Mataja Miguna, Isaac Mudusi, the only genuine human rights activist I know is Miguna.
That was fast.
That was very fast.
That was really fast.
Roy Ogola says, I support Epale Kilande, who said that youth employment should be included in human rights.
Yes.
How'd you wake up at 5 a.m. to go attend a board meeting at 90 years old? Who does that?
Who does that? Kwapi, Eli.
Wow.
Yeah? Who does that?
11 minutes to go before the top of the hour. Great conversation here. Youths are the biggest victims of human rights issues. Unemployment is the order of the day. Our youthful president is recycling spent cartridges back into government. Where are we headed as a nation? These are the best part about this is, people complain that we have too much freedom sometimes in this country, but at least it's a way of venting, a way of letting out, the pent up energy, which you'd rather, release than keep inside.
That comment would be a silly comment, to be honest. You can't have too much freedom. It's like too much air. Can you have too much air?
You don't need enough.
Yeah, too much air, too much water.
Yeah.
Too much sunshine. Come on, human rights is like those three things: sunshine, air, and water. You can't have too much.
Just enough.
Just enough.
Yeah.
And
as long as you don't abuse it.
Yes.
So with rights come responsibilities, and I think this is really important. So one of the things that the Constitution has allowed us to do is to be able to to protest non-violently. It allows us to demonstrate and to express ourselves without hurting anybody, without being toxic or without hating anybody. And I think that's where the level of maturity comes with a society. You can't just use these rights to oppress others. That is not human rights work.
Yeah. This past weekend, human rights organizations held a huge concert in Karura Forest. Irungu, we had interviewed the EU folks here early in the week, and then of course later in the week we had Maya von Lecker. How was it, by the way?
It was great. I mean, the energy was wonderful. There were a lot of people came out from a place like Madare, Dandora, and I'm very present to the young artists that were spoken word mic artists who basically entertained us for 3 hours on stories of human rights, women's rights. Even they talked about gay rights, which was kind of interesting because this society has tend to make invisible the lesbian, gay community and also refugees. That was the other area that was discussed. So I think it's been great. Today the celebrations continue. Today we're at the University of Nairobi. All your listeners are welcome to come. It's an open event. Starts at 10 o'clock, and a number of speakers headlined by the County Governor of Turkana, Nanok, who will be in the house, and he will be talking a bit about how far the governments have gone in implementing these rights. And then in the evening we have a concert at the Alliance Française, which is free, and everybody is welcome to come to that as well. So there's a full day today, whether it's in the morning or in the evening at the Alliance Française. You're all welcome to come. We're also asking Kenyans to follow the hashtag Stand Up for Human Rights, and 4 is the number 4, so Stand Up for Human Rights. There you can see lots of things that are happening across the country.
55 years since independence, and that happens in 2 days, Irungu. Do we have a lot to be grateful for as a country, as a nation?
I mean, I think if you went back to 1948, you would be more than proud of how far we've come. I mean, the distance between the experience that our forefathers and foremothers had in 1948 and what we are enjoying now, there is no comparison whatsoever. We are in a different space completely. We still have more to do. We have too many people who live without services, who basically are hopeless and are threatened by other people or by the state. And I think that is the work of human rights workers. And I've often said this is not the job of Amnesty International, it's not the job of the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, it's actually the job of every citizen. If all citizens took action on human rights, this country would be in a much better place.
Catch Jeff Koinange and Professor Hamo every day, Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. only on Hot 96.